Assalamu alaikum everyone. I am Nayab Iqbal and I, along with Kaukab Azhar, will be presenting on Are Two Teachers Better Than One? Co-teaching in digital classrooms. I'll begin with a brief introduction. I completed my BA Honours and Masters in English from University of Karachi, and I'm currently pursuing PhD in English Language Studies from UKM, that's National University of Malaysia. I have been associated with ELT since a long time now. I have worked as a language teacher at primary school level, secondary school level. I have also worked as a teacher's trainer, and I have worked as a lecturer at Salim Habib University, Ahmedabad University, and Liari University. My open teacher journey started with completing the global online course on integrating critical thinking into exploration of EFL context in 2020. I have been actively participating in several MOOCs as well, and I have attended American English Live webinar series. I've also hosted the Virtual English Language Expo in 2021, and I've also worked as a mentor in the mentorship program.
Thank you, Nayab. So my name is Kaukab Azhar, and I completed my BBA and MBA from Institute of Business Management, Karachi. Then I completed my Masters in English from University of Karachi. And just like Nayab, my PhD is also in progress, and I've completed my coursework from the National University of Malaysia, UKM. As far as my professional experience is concerned, I started in the corporate sector. I worked 4 years as an area sales manager at Coach PLC. And since 2017, I have been working as a senior lecturer at Salim Habib University, which is formerly known as the Barrett Hodgson University. As far as my open teacher journey is concerned, it began in 2017 with a course in summative and formative assessment in language teaching from University of Oregon. Then I presented in the NELTA conference held in Nepal, 2018, which was sponsored by RELO. And I have participated in the e-teacher conference held in 2018. And I also presented my paper on critical thinking skills in the first English Language Expo, which was held in Karachi in the year 2020.
So basically, co-teaching is an educational method that involves two teachers who are working together at the same time to plan a classroom and make assessment on one group of students. So basically, co-teaching is more about sharing responsibility and accountability. So unlike a traditional classroom where one teacher takes the whole responsibility of the class, from lesson planning to delivering the lecture to planning assessment and taking the assessment, in co-teaching classroom, a classroom that is based on co-teaching method, involves two teachers dividing that responsibility and accountability among themselves. When we talk about co-teaching, we think or we assume that co-teaching is something contemporary or something that has been introduced or that has gained prominence only a few years back or maybe in the last decade. Very few of us are actually aware of the history behind co-teaching. How did it actually, start, and the relevance of co-teaching and what was the purpose of co-teaching. So in order to better understand the crux or the concept of co-teaching, it's crucial to look at the history of co-teaching. So Kaukab will help us briefly understand the context in which co-teaching was introduced. So over to you, Kaukab.
It started back in the 1960s, and the main focus was on special education students. Since those students needed personalized and individualized attention, co-teaching was a method that was introduced in order to cater to their special needs. So since there were a lot of mainstreaming and inclusion efforts that started to take shape in 70s and 80s, co-teaching also started to gain importance. So it was a slow and gradual process, and certainly people also thought that yes, co-teaching can deliver in other areas as well. So primary, secondary, and tertiary levels also started to adopt some practices of co-teaching. So it has evolved over the years, it has evolved over the decades. And but the question here is that why are we talking about co-teaching right now?
Yes, it's a very relevant question that we all have an idea of what co-teaching is, but how do we think that it has become relevant all of a sudden now? So basically, the reason we are discussing about co-teaching and why we think that we can incorporate it in a digital classroom, or why now, is because of the impact of COVID-19. So there are three main reasons because of which I think it's time to talk about co-teaching and try to incorporate it in our classroom. Number one, it's due to the fact that COVID helped us unlock the potential of technology in delivering education. It has helped us redefine the role of educator, and it has resulted in an increased willingness to experiment. What do I mean by that? I'll elaborate on this idea. So basically, if we can all recall, before COVID, especially in our part of the world, in Pakistan, very few people had an idea of using technology for delivering education. In fact, majority of us were reluctant to even talk about technology and using technology because we preferred staying in our comfort zone. So from teachers to administrators to students, none of us ever tried using technology for facilitating teaching and learning. So, but however, the moment pandemic happened and lockdown happened, we had no other choice than to switch towards online mode of learning and switch to the virtual mode of methods of teaching. So that shift, since we had no idea of different tools and technology and of the way it should be used in a balanced manner and the way it can be used in a way that facilitates learning, that shift was unplanned and it was very rapid. However, despite all the struggles that all the educators have faced due to this sudden shift to virtual learning, it was just, it was just not an option, but this virtual learning became a necessity. So, so pandemic actually helped us understand the relevance of technology in education today, in today's time. So that is why we think that this is the right time to experiment with different modes and methods of teaching. Also, before COVID, I believe that the role of teacher was very defined in a physical classroom. So most of the time, teachers used to plan their lesson in a particular manner. And I would say that they were the ones solely controlling the classroom most of the time. In most of the educational institute, this has been a norm. However, switching to the virtual mode of learning has basically redefined the role of educators. It has obviously switching to the virtual learning came up with new challenges for the educators, but it has also came up with new opportunities for them. So now that we have been teaching through virtual modes for almost 2 years now, we have an idea how this virtual mode of teaching has opened new opportunities for us where our role have been redefined. So now our role is more of a facilitator, and we sort of try to help our students learn and become independent so that they can gain most out of that virtual setting. So because we have adapted ourselves and we have somehow came out of our comfort zone, which we were not willing to before COVID. So this is the time that we can talk about incorporating co-teaching or maybe incorporating any new method of teaching into our classroom. Okay, so COVID has also resulted in an increased willingness to experiment. Before COVID, not only teachers were reluctant to use technology because of the difficulties that they anticipated they might had to face. But administrators as well were not at all, they were not cooperative when it comes to using technology in the educational institute. They took it as something that would cost them more as compared to a normal traditional physical classroom. And learners were also not that much comfortable with using technology for learning. However, after COVID, all the stakeholders have now become more open to experimenting and trying new ways and modes of teaching and learning.
Now, the question here is that what difficulties did you face in managing digital classrooms? This question is for the in-person audience here as well, and the online audience. So we will be taking all the comments, and we will be discussing all the comments at the end of the session. If you ask me what was the most significant difficulty in managing online classroom, for me it was the technical issues that came along with it. So sometimes the internet connection wasn't working, sometimes the laptop wasn't working, sometimes there was a problem at the student end. So there were a lot of technical issues that wasted our classroom time. Not only it wasted the classroom time, but it also disrupted the entire classroom. So for instance, I'm building up a concept, and suddenly my mic wasn't working, so I had to start from the scratch. So technical issues, I think most of us will agree that these technical issues were a major hindrance in virtual learning. Then increased workload. For me, it was it increased my workload a lot because I was working 60 hours a week. I was supposed to enroll all my students in Microsoft Teams, and I had to conduct all the assessments. I had to make sure that all the students were also familiarized with the technology. So it had an impact in my overall workload. And so this was another difficulty that I had to personally face while I was transitioning to online learning. Then learning new technologies. Initially, when we had to shift to online, I was using Google Classroom, but Google Classroom did not have the capability to conduct online classes. So I shifted to Zoom. But then my university came up with this university-wide policy that we will be conducting classes on Microsoft Teams. So I had to learn new technologies. I had to spend a lot of time in getting to know the fundamentals of the new technologies. And there were so many new tools. For instance, I was taking quizzes on Quizlets. I was uploading files on iCloud. So there was a lot to learn, but it took a lot of toll on me. Nayab, what difficulties did you face in managing online classrooms?
Yes. So the biggest difficulty that I faced as a language teacher in my virtual classroom was the minimal chances of interaction, connection, and feedback. So for me, having one-on-one interaction with my students and building a rapport and connection with them has been a very important part of my teaching philosophy or my teaching methodology. And getting constant feedback from them is also very important. So this was way easier for me in a traditional physical classroom, where I had more chances of having eye contact with my student, having one-on-one interaction with my student, listening to my students and building a connection with them, and getting immediate feedback based on their immediate response or their body language. However, maintaining that connection and getting that feedback, constant feedback, became very challenging in a virtual setup. So this was one difficulty that I faced. And also, since I had to manage a lot of things together, ensuring that technology is working okay, and my slides are fine, and I am audible. So there were so many things going on that I would somehow, lost this focus from these things. But later on, always, all the time, I would have this dissatisfaction that maybe my students are unable to understand or if they're learning properly or not. So this was the major challenge that I faced. Disciplinary issue is common in any classroom, especially at the initial phase, be it a physical classroom or a virtual classroom. However, we were used to handling a physical traditional classroom despite teaching a large group of learners as well. Whereas we had to get we weren't used to of handling technology the way we were used to handling students in a physical classroom. So handling the disciplinary issues along with handling so many other things was yet another challenge for me in virtual learning. I personally felt that because of this interaction through screen, I missed a lot of things that I used to do in my on-campus classroom. So there I felt that my classrooms were more engaging, more interesting, and more interactive. Whereas sitting in front of the screen and then delivering the lecture and speaking, most of the time, and then not having that one-on-one interaction with the students resulted in some sort of monotony. So that sort of somehow resulted in my students losing their interest. At times I felt that. So this was yet another challenge that I faced. Another difficulty that I faced was of so many distractions that I have to face when I'm teaching through an online mode. In a traditional classroom, in an on-campus classroom, everything was very smooth and everything was timed and properly scheduled. Whereas there are a lot of things that are out of control when you're sitting at your home and teaching from there. So constantly, overcoming those distractions was yet another challenge that I had to overcome.
Yes, we as teachers had to come up with the possible solutions for all the problems that we were facing. So one of the possible solution or an alternate was to introduce co-teaching. And the whole concept behind this was that many of the best co-teaching practices can be applied in the virtual learning environment as well. So there's enough literature that suggests that there are plenty of benefits of co-teaching in traditional classrooms, but specifically in digital classrooms, a lot of those things were applicable. But if you talk about co-teaching models, we must first realize that co-teaching is not easy. It requires a lot of practice, and there are different methods that teachers need to first experience and get hands-on experience so that they can apply those methods in their classrooms. So there are 6 models of co-teaching that we will be discussing, and I'll request Nayab to introduce the first 3, and then I'll take over from the 4th model.
All right. Yes. So the very first model and the simplest model of co-teaching is one teach and one observe. In this model, the role of one teacher is that he or she directly instruct the students, while the role of the second teacher is more passive. The second teacher only observes. So here, one teacher is leading the classroom, is looking after everything from delivering lectures and planning lessons to assessments and everything, while the other teacher only intervenes in case there is any issue or there is a technical glitch or there is a need to troubleshoot. So the other teacher is only the observer. Second model is one teach and one assist. So you might think that this model is same as the first model, but here the role of the second teacher is a step ahead. So in this model, basically one teacher is again directly instructing the student, while the other teacher assists individual students as needed. So unlike the first model, in which the role of the second teacher was more of an observer, here the second teacher is more of a helper, in the sense that in case a particular group of students face any difficulty, she or he will be there to assist those students. So if there is a group of students who have come late to the classroom and they are clueless about what's happening, the other teacher can assist them. So the role of the other teacher is more of an assistance, or of a helper. Parallel teaching. In this method of teaching, the class is divided into two groups, and each teacher teaches the same information at the same time. So here in Pakistan, we are used to handling a large group of learners. Like, sometimes the number would exceed to 50 or 60 students per class, especially in public sector universities. So if we adopt this kind of co-teaching, we can easily divide our classroom into 25 student, our class into two groups with 25 students or 30 students per group. And then both teacher can teach the same information at the same time to two groups. Now, Kaukab will tell us more about the remaining three types of co-teaching model.
Thank you, Nayab. So the fourth model is station teaching. Station teaching is when each teacher teaches a specific part of the content to different groups. So the students, they will rotate between the teachers. So for instance, a teacher has developed an expertise on doing classroom activities. So the classroom activity component of the course will be conducted by that particular teacher, whereas another teacher who has expertise in explaining theories, so that particular teacher will explain the theoretical part of the course. So each teacher teaching a specific part of the content, and the students will rotate between the teachers. So that's the fourth model of co-teaching, station teaching. The fifth is alternate teaching. In alternate teaching, one teacher teaches the bulk of the students and the other teaches a small group based on needs. So we have all had classrooms in which there have been mixed ability students. So for instance, 80% of the class is 7 on 10 in terms of language proficiency, while 20% of the class is below 7. So what we can do is one teacher can manage the 70% of the class, and the other teacher will teach a small group of students, the remaining 20% of the class, and so that they are able to catch up with it, and then they will join the bulk of the classroom as well. So alternative teaching is when one teacher teaches the bulk of the students and the other teacher teaches to a small group. Then comes team teaching. In team teaching, both teachers are directly instructing to students at the same time. This is also known as tag team teaching. This is what we are doing at the moment. So Nayab and I are both sharing the instructional material equally. So again, it's important that both the teachers have they both trust each other and they are able to share the lesson plan equally. So let's recap let's do a recap of all the six co-teaching models. So starting with one teach, one observe. So in that case, Nayab will be teaching and I will just be observing. So if there is a need, for instance, there's a technical issue, I'll be the person who's going to get the technical help. So I'm observing, but I'm also interfering if there's a required in some aspects. The second model is one teach, one assist. In this case, Nayab will be teaching the lesson and I will be assisting her. So for instance, there is a student who needs some guidance and he's typing on in the comment section. So I'll be catering to the comments of the student. So one teach, one assist. Then comes team teaching, in which both of us will equally share the instructional material. We will both be teaching to the same group of students at the same time. Then comes alternative teaching. Alternative teaching is when now we'll be teaching the bulk of the class. For instance, 80% students will be taught by Nayab, whereas I'll be taking a small group of students outside the class so that they can cover up for the last round. Then comes station teaching. Station teaching is when a particular teacher teaches a specific content of the class. So Nayab will be explaining the theoretical elements of the course, whereas I will be I'll be conducting activities or group assignments. So both teacher and the students will rotate between the two teachers. It's parallel teaching, in which the two teachers will equally divide the number of students among themselves, and we'll be teaching the same course to different students. So Nayab will take 20 students and I'll take the 20 students, and we'll we'll conduct the same exercises, but to different group of students at the same time. That is parallel teaching. There are numerous benefits of co-teaching. As the student to teacher ratio improves, it increases the overall attention. It also allows us to share our expertise. So as I said, maybe someone is better at conducting group activities while the other is better at planning lessons. So they both can learn from each other. And most importantly, it allows the teachers to share responsibility. So if there's an increased workload and a lot of burden on the teachers, they can equally share responsibility and delegate tasks to each other whenever there's a need. Let's see a short video on how co-teaching in digital classrooms can help.
Okay, so now we'll move on to the essay writing process. So every essay or paper that you're writing, it consists of three main stages. The first stage is of preparation stage. I'll be discussing the details later. Then you come to the writing stage, and then the third stage is the revision stage. So these stages basically apply to all essays, but how much time and effort you spent on each stage depends on the type of essay or the type of paper that you're working on. So, hello, am I audible? Can you guys hear me? I don't know. Can you look at me? Okay. Hello? Hello, CR? Yeah, actually, I think I lost my connection. I don't get any response from anyone. I think you people are unable to listen to me. So yeah, you can't follow, right? I think there is some issue with my either my Zoom or my internet. I'm just trying to figure it out. Okay, just give me a few minutes, please. Now we'll be moving on to discussing the essay writing process. The essay writing process primarily consists of three stages: preparation, writing, and revision. So no matter whichever essay you're working on or whatever paper you're working on, these stages apply to every writing. However, the time and effort that you spent on each stage depends on the kind of writing that you're doing. So now I'll discuss the first stage in detail, that what happens in the first stage.
I think Nayab has lost her connection. So as you were saying, that the essay writing process consists of three stages: preparation, writing, and revision. And these stages apply to every essay or paper. But the time and effort spent on each stage depends on the type of essay. So moving on to the next slide, which is related to the interpersonal communication process. So as you can see from this figure, that the communications process begins with the sender who sends a message through a medium, and that medium then the receiver receives the message, and there's a lot of noise in between. There's a lot of noise in my room as well. So can you please give me 5 minutes? I'll be back. So moving on to the interpersonal communication process, as you can see from this figure, that in the process, there's a sender who sends a message to a medium, and the receiver receives the message, he decodes it, and there can be a lot of noise and distraction in between, just like there's a lot of noise in my room. So just give me 5 minutes, I'll be back, and Nayab, if you can please take it.
All right, so I guess there was some issue. All right. So like Kaukab just mentioned about the interpersonal communication process. So basically there is a message, there's a sender who sends the message, and there can be different medium, and the receiver's job is to decode the message. All right, since we are talking about the need for tolerance in this world and how we need to be empathetic towards each other, I would like to specifically mention a movie that I want you people to please watch, maybe over the weekend, Freedom Writers. Do watch this movie. And how many of you have actually watched this movie, and what is the message that you have learned? Okay, so I am getting some completely irrelevant responses in my chat box. Please maintain the decorum of the class and don't send these kinds of messages, okay? Let me just focus. Since we are talking about some basic human values like empathy, tolerance, and compassion, so there are a few movies that I would like to recommend. Please watch Freedom Writers, especially when we talk about tolerance and, you know, spreading pluralism in the society. This is a very important movie that you can watch. So how many of you can have actually watched this movie? And you know, you can maybe share it in the chat box, your experiences, your opinions about it. All right, and the next movie that I would like to recommend is The Pursuit of Happiness. This is also a very good movie with a very, very important message. So this is something that you can watch over the weekend, and then maybe we can discuss it later.
Okay, so these were some of the benefits that co-teaching can offer in a digital classroom. Nayab, what are the other benefits of co-teaching in digital classrooms?
So the first benefit of incorporating co-teaching in a digital classroom is in the form of help that we can get in case there is a technical issue. You all have just watched the video and you have seen how the other teacher took over when there was a technical issue. Whereas when one teacher is taking the whole control of a classroom in a digital classroom, it becomes way more difficult to handle technical glitches along with delivering lesson at the same time. So this is one of the major benefits of incorporating co-teaching in digital classrooms. The second benefit of co-teaching in digital classroom is managing workload. So we have already discussed how the sudden shift to virtual learning resulted in resulted in extreme work pressure for most of the educators, where they had to do everything from learning teaching tools and technology to planning assessment and doing everything. However, if two teachers take responsibility of one classroom or of one group of learner, they can easily divide the workload. So let's suppose if one teacher is spending more time in mastering a technological tool, the other teacher can take responsibility of delivering lessons or interacting with students. So co-teaching will result in a more balanced workload for both the educators who are involved in the process. Another benefit of co-teaching in a digital classroom is linked to learning new tools and software itself. So we have already shared how teachers have to switch from one tool, educational tool or technological tool to other tool, and how they had to constantly learn different tools. However, if there are two teachers involved, they can even divide these tools among themselves. So if I and Kaukab are co-teaching, I can probably learn more about teaching tools like, how to use Zoom effectively, how to make use of breakout rooms in Zoom for doing group activities, or how to use tools like Teams, and how to use Google Classrooms. And Kaukab can probably spend more time on using assessment tools like Kahoot or Quizlet. So, then in this way, we wouldn't be having pressure of mastering everything at the same time. You have just seen an example in the video that how having two teachers at the same time resulted in a more disciplined classroom. So this is what can happen when there are two instructors involved. I, as a teacher, can solely focus on my lecture because I have my co-teacher who is there to handle the classroom and look after these extra things happening around. So yes, this is also a major benefit of co-teaching. I discussed how co-teaching, virtual learning sort of makes classroom more monotonous. However, when there are two teachers involved who have their own experiences and way of teaching, students will have an access to diverse, perspective, and that would somehow break the monotony that becomes, unavoidable when one teacher is sitting in front of the screen and delivering lecture in the same way every day. So this is also another benefit of co-teaching in digital classrooms. Again, this is something that you have seen in the video, that there are few distractions that we cannot avoid, especially when we are at our home due to lockdown and we have to take classes from our home. So there's few things that we cannot do anything about. But if I have my co-teacher with me, I'm pretty much sure that he can help me with all those distractions and my classrooms can become more focused.
Yes, thank you, Nayab. And yes, the biggest challenge of co-teaching is related to the resources that are that are required for effective implementation. So when I proposed co-teaching to in my university, each teacher has to take a course load of 15 credit hours. But when I proposed co-teaching, that meant that now I'll be teaching 30 credit hours. So it's not about sharing the burden. It's like if you're teaching 30 hours, then you divide it by 2, it will be 15 hours. So if you are asking for co-teaching model to be implemented, you must make sure that all the stakeholders have an idea of how it works, because if they consider it as a cost burden, they will never approve it. And even if they do, it's not going to yield the benefits that it should do, because the whole focus will be on resources. Then it's difficult to trust other teachers, because in a traditional classroom, in a single teacher setting, a teacher has the complete control over the classroom. And when you add another teacher to the classroom, it requires a lot of trust at both ends. So, and it's something that is difficult to obtain. It requires a lot of effort, and for that you need collaboration. And often collaboration is difficult than competition, because in order to collaborate, you have to be open, you have to be transparent, you have to share resources, you have to share burden, share responsibility, and collaboration takes effort, and not all the teachers will be able to make that transition. Another important thing is that co-teaching requires specific training. We have all received some sort of teachers training, but none of it was related to co-teaching. So if any institute is planning to implement co-teaching in their classrooms, then it requires specific training in which collaboration and trust building exercises must be included. Now, if you talk about recommendations, if you want to implement co-teaching in your institutions, the first thing that you must understand is that you have to sell the value of co-teaching, because it's obvious that co-teaching is expensive. But if your institute is willing to take the chance that they will implement co-teaching, then you must communicate that it will bring additional value to the table. So it's also important that you have done your homework. You cannot expect any institute to completely buy your idea and implement co-teaching without you doing all the homework. So you must understand that what sort of co-teaching will be proposed, and the focus should be on long-term benefits. For instance, you can maybe propose a one teach, one assist model for one classroom in the initial stages, so that you can demonstrate the value to the administrators and to the key decision makers. It's also important that you must understand that there must be horses for courses. For instance, you know that in a government institution, it's difficult to arrange for additional resources. So in that case, maybe you can go to that one teach, one assist model, but that assistance could come from your class CR. So you must understand that you cannot propose anything that is not suited to your environment and expect it to be accepted by the institution. So the focus should be on selling value and selling the long-term benefits of co-teaching. And yes, there might be cases and there might be some financial constraints or resource constraints. So in some cases, this co-teaching model will not be applicable.
That hybrid or virtual mode of teaching and learning is here to stay. So instead of staying, skeptical about, adopting new, or experimenting with new methods of teaching, it's time to embrace different methods of teaching and learning and explore different methods of teaching and learning that facilitates the process of learning. So we believe that if we incorporate co-teaching in digital classrooms in an effective manner, it can change the educational landscape. It can make our virtual classrooms more organized, disciplined, and more productive. Also, co-teaching, if implemented successfully and effectively, can result in minimizing the difficulties that we all usually experience in a virtual learning setup. And considering the immense benefits of co-teaching, I feel that co-teaching is now more relevant than ever before. So that's what I had to say. Over to you, Kaukab.
Co-teaching requires continuous collaboration. And whenever you are deciding on implementing a co-teaching module, you must understand that co-teaching requires collaboration right from the start till the end. So when you are planning a lesson, planning a course, the two teachers must sit together and plan accordingly. And then even when the course is completed, then post-evaluation of the course is also necessary. And the teachers must be open and transparent about their learnings, about the difficulties that they have faced. When you are selecting a co-teacher, you should always look for complementary skill set. Previously, it's common practice that in co-teaching, seniors are paired up with juniors, but that is not always the best possible method. You must focus on finding two teachers with a complementary skill set. So if, let's say, I'm weak technically, I should be pairing up with someone who's technically sound. If someone has, let's say, better oral communication skills, then that person should be paired up with someone who has who's more efficient in giving feedback. So complementary skill set helps in developing the right team for co-teaching. And finally, communication is the key. In co-teaching, communication between the two teachers and the students is absolutely essential. And without communication, there will be no trust. So that's it from our side. And these are the references that we have used for our presentation. Any questions, we'll be happy to answer.